Have you ever shown up to a sales call and secretly hoped that the prospect ghosted you? Earlier this week, I was on a group call and this individual was struggling with their sales process due to limiting beliefs. And it was when we asked this individual, have you ever shown up to a sales call and secretly hoped that the prospect ghosted you? Secretly hoped that they don't show up to the call because you were so anxious to go forwards with this call. You don't have the confidence in themselves. And not only did this individual admit to doing that, almost half the call then confessed up and said, yes, Dylan, I've struggled with that too. And it was at that moment that I realized that there was a problem to solve. I realized that there was limiting beliefs that were plaguing everybody's growth and stopping people from unlocking growth within their own SMMA and as entrepreneurs themselves. And so I then redid the direction of the call and I delivered a masterclass and I completely unshackled all these guys' limiting beliefs that they had, and they are now charging 2 to 10x what they currently are and feel as confident as ever going into their sales calls. So I've repackaged this masterclass and I'm going to share with you guys how to confidently pitch $2,000 to $10,000 without case studies, okay? And I want you guys to get ready to be unplugged from the SMMA matrix here. So if you believed that eating a peanut butter and jam sandwich every single day for 30 days would bring you to $10,000 a month, would you commit and execute? If you believed that by doing 100 push-ups a day for 30 days would bring you to $10,000 a month, would you commit and execute? If you believed that by doing 50 cold calls a day for 30 days would bring you to $10,000 a month, would you commit and execute? Okay. And if I had to guess, the answer to those last 3 questions were yes. Okay. And so the only reason that you aren't putting in the actions that you need to put in order to get to where you want to be is because you do not fully believe that if you were to do it, you're going to get there. You do not fully believe that if you started to charge $2,000 to $5,000 per month, you'd be able to close and you'd be able to get to your goal of $10,000 per month. Okay. And so what I'm going to do for you is first I'll tell you guys a story about Roger Bannister. So Roger Bannister was a monumental figure in the athletic world. He was the first person to rub a sub 4-minute mile. Now, the story goes as follows. So for centuries, it was believed that running a mile under 4 minutes was impossible. It was believed that if a human body was to do this, their heart would implode. That is what the doctors were saying. That is what the experts were saying. But Roger Bannister didn't listen to them. He listened to himself, and he went out there one day and ran a sub 4-minute mile. Now, that's not the impressive part, because what ended up happening is despite breaking a monumental athletic record, his record only stood for 6 weeks before John Landy, who is actually this fella right here, broke his record and ran a 3-minute and 57-second mile. Now, what's even crazier is after John Landy and Roger Bannister shook the running world, 36 people did it that year and over 1,000 people did it the next year. There was no changes to their training. There was no changes to their equipment. There was no changes to the way they ran. The only difference was they now believed that it was possible, and so they went and made it happen. Okay. And my goal with this video is to get you to believe that you can 2 to 10x your SMMA prices and go from struggling, broke, trying to make money, trying to afford your go high level subscriptions, constantly going at the end of the month and looking how much revenue you made and look at your expenses and seeing that it's break even or at worst, even negative, and to stop that cycle. Right? And to charge these high ticket prices so you can actually realize the dream that you are set out to be. You can actually be able to achieve that moment of telling everybody that that isn't believing in you, that they were wrong. Okay. And so I'm going to do this by first abolishing your excuses and your limiting beliefs that you have right now. And then I'm going to empower you to prove the world wrong and actually go and execute this. Okay. So before I continue, I need to know if I make you believe this, if I make you believe that you can, and you have the ability to 2 to 10x the price of your SMMA services, you will execute. Okay. So I'm going to show you something right here. This is your client's P&L statement, profit and loss statement. Okay. Here's an example of a random gym that I found. Okay. You're looking at this, and maybe if you're a beginner entrepreneur, you have no idea what this means, but I'm going to show you 3 numbers that matter here. Bam. Okay. This is an average gym, right? An average gym. And in year 1, they spent $235,000. In year 2, they spent $368,000. And in year 3, they spent $402,000. Okay. So let's say you get them in year 2, right? Which most of the clients that we're hitting up, they've probably been in business for at least 1 year. Okay. And they're spending $368,000 to operate their gym. Do you think they could afford $2,500 to grow their gym? Do you think they could afford $2,500 to bring them in 30 new members per month? I would say so. Here's the exact same scenario in the home improvement niche. Okay. This company is spending $424,000. And this is just one portion of their expenses. This is the only one I could find. Okay. $424,000. Do you think they could afford an additional 5K setup fee to set them up with a system to consistently bring them new work? Do you think they'd be okay spending $429,000 as opposed to $424,000 to then get an additional 30 jobs throughout the year? I think so. Okay. If you spent $200,000 a year to run your business, would you spend an additional $2,500 to grow it? Okay. Being super conservative here. Let's say it cost you $200,000 a year to run your SMMA, and I was coming in there and I pitched you $2,500 to help you grow it. Would you say yes? Of course you fucking would. Okay. Now, there was once a guy named Drake, and he was walking down the street. Now, Drake wasn't broke, but he didn't have a lot of money, and he wanted to make a change. And as he was walking, a stranger actually approached him. He asked him if he wanted to hit a piñata. Confused, Drake was like, okay. He said yes. So he grabbed the baseball bat and he beat the piñata to a pulp. And as the piñata broke, $1,000 came flying out and fluttered to the ground. The stranger looked at Drake and said, "That's yours, man. You're part of this YouTube video." Drake, as happy as could be, thanked the stranger for his kind gesture, right? I thought he was super cool. He's like, always seeing those videos on YouTube and TikTok and stuff. And he's like, wow, I'm actually in them. Okay. And soon later, Drake left and he began to walk home. And within minutes, Drake had a massive realization. He realized that although he was just given $1,000, his life did not change whatsoever, because $1,000 is not a lot of money. So why the fuck are you charging less than $2,500? If I was to give you $1,000 right now, would that change your life in any way, shape, or form? The answer is no, it would not. It would be a nice night out at the club. But $1,000 is not a lot of money. But us humans, we're so wired for loss aversion. We fear loss so much more than we pursue gain, right? But in order to fully understand how little of $1,000 loss is, we need to flip the script and look at it towards $1,000 gain. And once we realize that $1,000 gain is next to nothing, we can confidently see that it is peanuts. It is pennies. And so we should not be charging anything less than $2,500. Now, 2 years ago, I felt stuck and I was desperate to scale my agency. This is when I was in the process of making the transition from working with everybody to niching down. And I went through a couple months where I was plateaued, and I feel like even though I've been growing month over month over month, I was stuck. I was stuck at around the $20,000 per month mark. I couldn't break through, and $50,000 a month was like an impossible ceiling is what it felt like, okay? And at that time, 2 years ago, I got rinsed. I spent $25,000 on a single program. $25,000 on a single program. Okay. And the number one question I get asked is, was it worth it? To which I then say, I could barely get any help on calls because there was literally hundreds of people that were thrown into the same Zoom call. The response time, anytime I did have a question and I could reach out to my coach, was like 3 days. And none of the ideas that I was given over the 4 months actually panned out. But yes, it was 100% worth it. And confused when I tell them that, most people ask me like, why? Like how? How is that possible? And I say, because it showed me one thing. It showed me hundreds of business owners who also willingly spent $25,000 on this program. It showed me that my prospects were out there spending $25,000. It showed me how my $1,000 retainers were way too cheap, which is why my second agency started with a ticket price of $5,000 and is ultimately what allowed me to hit just under $25,000 per month in 4 weeks of launching my second agency. Okay. So now you have two options right now. Number one is you can invest your own $25,000 into a program to learn this lesson, just like I did. And number two is to take my word for it. Okay. Now, if you want to see people just like you win and help break these limiting beliefs so you can first get your first client and then scale up to $10,000 per month and beyond, join the First Client Challenge. I fucking guarantee it'll be the best decision you ever make in your life, right? With that, appreciate your time. I hope to see you in the next video.